Chapter 56. The clock was ticking. Instinct and theories weren't enough. Being sure wasn't enough. We needed evidence. You plan. You wait and you plan, and you execute those plans with mathematical precision. I could see Bo in my mind, his lips upturned in something like a smile. Waiting for our time to run out. Waiting for the FBI to let him go. Sloane sat in front of the television, a tablet plugged into the side. She wasn't crying now. She wasn't even blinking. She was just watching the moment her brother's corpse had been discovered, again and again.
Sloane. Judd stood in the doorway. Sweetheart, turn that off.
Sloane didn't even seem to hear him. She watched the camera footage shake as an agent ran toward Aaron's body.
Cassie, turn it off.
Judd issued the order to me this time. You want to protect us, I thought, knowing quite well where Judd's need to do that came from. You want us to be safe and well and warm. But Judd couldn't protect Sloane from this.
Dean.
Judd turned his attention to my fellow profiler. Before Dean could reply, Sloane spoke up. 6 cameras, but none of them are stationary. I can extrapolate Bo's position, but the margin of error in calculating his trajectory is bigger than I would like. She paused the footage over Aaron's corpse. For a moment, she lost herself to the image of her brother's blood-spattered body, her gaze hollow. The killer was right-handed. Spatters consistent with a single wound, left to right across the victim's neck. The blade was angled slightly upward. Killer's height is roughly 70.5 inches, plus or minus half an inch.
Sloane,
Judd said sharply. She blinked, then turned away from the screen. It's easier, I thought, slipping from Judd's perspective into Sloane's. When the body belongs to the victim. Easier when you don't have to think Aaron's name. Sloane shut off the television. I can't do this. For a moment, Judd looked relieved. Then Sloane got out her laptop. I need stationary footage, higher resolution. Seconds later, her fingers were flying over the keys. Hypothetically speaking, Leah said to Judd, if Sloane were hacking the Majesty's security feed, would you want to know? Judd looked at Sloane for several seconds. Then he walked over to her and pressed a kiss to the top of her head. She won't stop. She can't. You know that. His mouth set into a firm line. Judd turned back to Leah.
No,
he grunted.
If Sloane were illegally hacking her father's casino, I would not want to know.
Then he glanced back at Dean and Michael and me.
But, hypothetically speaking, what can I do to help?
You had less than a minute to do what needed to be done. As Sloane watched the security footage she'd hacked, murmuring numbers under her breath, I slipped into Bo's perspective, trying to imagine what he'd been thinking and feeling in those moments. You knew exactly where your target was standing. You knew Aaron wouldn't panic when the lights went off. Aaron Shaw was at the top of the food chain. You knew it would never occur to him that he might be your prey. Suspect was walking toward the stage at a rate of 1.6 meters per second. Victim was 24 meters away at a 42-degree angle to suspect's last marked trajectory. You knew exactly where you were going, exactly how to get there. Sloane froze the footage and did a screen capture the second before the lights went out. She repeated the process when the lights came back on. Before, after, before, after. Sloane toggled back and forth between the still images. In 59 seconds, the suspect moved forward 6.2 meters, still facing the stage. His pupils were dilated, Michael put in. Before the lights went off, his pupils were already dilated. Alertness, psychological arousal. If I can do this, Dean murmured. I'm invincible. If I can do this, I'm worthy. Aaron was the Majesty's golden son, the heir apparent. Killing him was an assertion of power. This is your inheritance. This is what you are. This is what you deserve. Bo's posture changes, Michael continued, It's subtle, but it's there, beneath the poker face. Michael indicated first one image, then the other. Anticipation before, and after, elation. He swung his eyes back to the first photo. Look how he's holding his shoulders. He glanced at Sloane. Play the footage. Sloane brought up the video and let it play. Restricted motion, Michael said. He's fighting tension in his shoulders. He's walking, but his arms are still by his sides. The knife, Dean murmured beside me, his eyes locked on the screen. I had it on me. I could feel it. That's why my arms aren't moving. The knife is weighing me down. Dean swallowed, shifting his eyes to me. I have the knife, he said, his voice pitched unnaturally low. I am the knife. On screen, everything went black. Seconds ticked by in silence. Adrenaline surged through your veins. I imagined being Bo. I imagined sidling up behind Aaron in the dark. No hesitation. He's stronger than you are, bigger. All you have is the element of surprise. All you have is a holiness of purpose. I imagined sliding the blade across Aaron's throat. I imagined letting it drop to the floor. I imagined walking back through the dark. I imagined knowing, with an unworldly, overwhelming certainty, that death was power. My power. On screen, the lights came back on, jarring me from the brief instant when I'd stopped talking to Bo and let myself be him. I could feel the heat from Dean's body beside me. I could feel the dark place he'd been the moment before, the place I'd gone too. Look at his arms, Michael said, gesturing to Bo. They swing slightly as you walk. You're lighter now, balanced, perfect. I've done what needed to be done. Dean looked down at his hands. And I got rid of the knife. The knife was found less than a meter away from the body. Sloane spoke at a stilted, uneven pace. Killer dropped it. He would have backed away. Couldn't risk stepping in Aaron's blood. There was something brittle in her voice, something fragile. Aaron's blood, she repeated. Sloane looked at crime scenes and saw numbers, spatter patterns and probability and signs of rigor mortis. But no matter how hard she tried, Aaron would never just be number 5 to her. The suspect's not wearing gloves. Leah was the one who made the observation. I doubt he left fingerprints on the knife, so what gives? Sloane closed her eyes. I could feel her cataloging the possibilities, going through the physical evidence again and again, hurting and pushing through it. Plastic. Judd had never weighed in on one of our cases before. He wasn't FBI. He wasn't a natural. But he was a former Marine. Something disposable. You wrap the knife in it, dispose of it separately. That's it. My heart skipped a beat. That's our smoking gun. So where did I dispose of it? Dean asked. Not a trash can. The police might look there. I forced myself to back up, to walk through it step by step. You make your way through the crowd, to Aaron. You come up behind him. You slice the knife across his neck, quick. No hesitation, no remorse. You peel the plastic off, drop the blade. 30 seconds, 40 seconds. How long has it been? How long do you have to make your way back to where you were when the lights went out? You push your way through the crowd. The crowd, I said out loud. Dean understood before the others. If I'm a killer who thinks of every contingency, I don't throw the evidence away. I let someone else do it for me. Preferably after they get home, I finished. He planted the evidence on someone, Leah translated. If I'm his mark and I get home and find a plastic bag in my pocket, I throw it away. Unless it has blood on it, Sloane said. A drop, a smear. I saw the web of possibilities, the way this played out. Depending on who you are, you might call the police. I considered a second possibility. Or you might burn it. There was a beat of saturated silence, brimming with the things none of us would say. If we don't find it, if we don't find the person who has it, our killer would win. Chapter 57. We need Bo's trajectory. Sloane tapped the pad of her thumb across each of her fingers, one after the other, again and again as she spoke. Point A to point B to point C. How did he get there? Who did he pass? Before, after. Before, after. Sloane went back to switching from one still image to the next. There are at least 9 unique paths with a likelihood greater than 7%. If I isolate the length and angle of the suspect's stride after the lights came back on... Sloane stopped talking, lost to the numbers in her head. The rest of us waited. And waited. Tears welled in Sloane's eyes. I knew her. I knew her brain was racing, and I knew that number after number, calculation after calculation, all she could see was Aaron's face, his empty eyes, the shirt he'd bought her. I wanted him to like me, she'd told me. Don't look at Bo. Leah broke the silence in the room. She caught Sloane's gaze and held it. When you're looking for a lie, sometimes you look at the liar, and sometimes you look at everyone else. The better the liar, the better the chance that your tell is going to come from someone else. When you're dealing with a group, you don't always watch the person speaking. You watch the worst liar in the room. Leah leaned back on the heels of her hands, the casual posture belied by the intensity in her voice. Don't look at the suspect, Sloane. Leah might have been trying to spare Sloane from looking, again and again, at Bo, knowing what he'd done to Aaron, but it was good advice. I could see the exact moment it took hold in Sloane's mind. Don't look at the suspect. Look at everyone else. Crowds move, Sloane said, her voice going up in pitch as she gathered steam. When someone works their way through a crowd, people move. If I can isolate the migration patterns during the blackout... Her eyes darted side to side. Scanning the footage, she sent the still images to the printer. Before, after. Her fingers grappled for a pen. She looked from the footage to the images and back again, uncapping the pen and circling clusters of people. Controlling for baseline movements with a margin of error for individual differences in response to chaos, there are gaps here, here, and here, with slight but consistent movement northwest and southeast among each cluster. Sloane drew a path from Aaron's body to Bo's final position, then ran her finger back over the path she'd drawn. You drop the knife. You make your way back through the crowd, light on your feet, never hesitating, never stopping. Pretend you're picking pockets, Dean told Leah, his gaze fixed on the path Sloane had drawn. Who are your easy marks? I'm insulted you think I would know, Leah replied, not sounding insulted in the least. She brought her fingertip to the image and tapped one long, painted nail against first one person, then 2 more. 1, 2, and 3, Leah said. If I were picking pockets, those would be my marks. You're weaving through the crowd. It's dark, chaotic. People are fumbling for their cell phones. You keep your head down. There's no room for hesitation, no room for mistakes. I looked at the 3 people Leah had indicated. You just killed a man, and you're going to let someone else dispose of the evidence. From the beginning, I'd seen our unsub as a planner, a manipulator. You knew exactly which mark to choose. That one. I pointed to the second of the 2 marks Leah had chosen. Late 20s, male, wearing a suit jacket. Mouth pursed in distaste. Familiar. Thomas Wesley's assistant. Michael recognized him, too. Not a big fan of the FBI, is he? We're on it. Agent Briggs wasn't a person to sit on a lead for long. He and Agent Sterling were in transit before we'd even finished briefing them. Will it be enough? I asked. Sloane had gone quiet beside me. No matter how badly she wanted answers, she wouldn't be able to form the question, so I asked it for her.
If the assistant still has it, and if it has Beau's fingerprints on it, and if forensics can tie it to either the knife or Aaron's blood.
Briggs let the number of conditionals in that sentence speak for itself.
Maybe.
Trace evidence. That was what this came down to. Trace evidence had told me my mother's blood was on that shawl. Trace evidence had said those bones were hers. The universe owes me this, I thought, fiercely, irrationally. Trace evidence had taken my mother away. Trace evidence could give Sloane, this one thing. Maybe isn't good enough. Leah spoke now, just as much for Sloane as I had. I want him squirming. I want him helpless. I want him to watch it all come crumbling down.
I know.
There was an undertone in Briggs's voice that told me he wanted the same. Wanted it the way he'd wanted Dean's father once upon a time.
We've got local PD working on tracking down video footage of Michael at the Desert Rose, of the hours leading up to the fight between Beau and the Majesty's head of security. Something will turn up.
Something has to, I thought desperately. You don't get to get away with this, Beau Donovan. You don't get to walk away from this unscathed. If we could obtain physical evidence and video evidence, the one thing we were missing was witness testimony. Tori Howard. I threw the name out there, knowing that I wasn't saying anything that Briggs and Sterling hadn't already considered.
We tried, Briggs replied curtly. This is the second time we've arrested Beau. She thinks he's innocent.
Of course Tori wouldn't want to believe Beau had done this. I thought about the young woman I'd profiled again and again. You loved Aaron. Beau can't have been the one to take him away from you.
We're the bad guys here, Briggs continued. Tori won't talk to us.
You loved Aaron, I thought again, still focused on Tori. You're grieving. I thought of the last time I'd seen Tori and let out a long breath. She won't talk to you, I said out loud. But she might talk to Sloane. Chapter 58. Tori didn't answer the first time we called, or the second, or the third. But Sloane had an eerie capacity for persistence. She could do the same thing over and over, caught in a loop until the outcome changed, jarring her from the pattern. You're not going to stop calling. You're not ever going to stop calling. Sloane dialed the number Sterling and Briggs had given her in full each time. I knew her well enough to know that she found some comfort in the rhythm, the motion, the numbers, but not enough. Stop calling, a voice answered, loud enough that I could make out every word from standing next to Sloane. Just leave me alone. For a split second, Sloane stood, frozen, uncertain now that the pattern had been broken. Leah snapped a finger in front of her face, and Sloane blinked. I told him. I told my father. Sloane went straight from one pattern to another. How many times had she spoken those words? How often must they have been repeating themselves in her head for her to utter them so desperately each time? Who is this? Tori's voice cracked on the other end of the phone line. With shaking hands, Sloane set the phone to speaker. I used to be Aaron's sister, and now I'm not. And you used to be his person, and now you're not. Sloane? I told my father that it was going to happen. I told him that there was a pattern. I told him that the next murder was going to happen in the Grand Ballroom on January 12th. I told him, Tori, and he didn't listen. Sloane sucked in a ragged breath. On the other end of the phone line, I could hear Tori doing the same. So you are going to listen, Sloane continued. You are going to listen because you know. You know that just because you ignore something, that doesn't make it go away. Pretending something doesn't matter doesn't make it matter less. Silence on the other end of the phone line. I don't know what you want from me, Tori said after a small eternity. I'm not normal, Sloane said simply. I've never been normal. She paused, then blurted out.
I'm the kind of not normal that works with the FBI.
This time, Tori's intake of breath sounded sharper. A flicker in Michael's eye told me he heard layers of emotion in it.
He was my brother, Sloane said again. And I just need you to listen.
Sloane's voice broke and broke again as she spoke.
Please.
Another eternity of silence, tenser this time.
Fine.
Tori clipped the word.
Say what you need to say.
I could feel Tori shifting from one mode to another. Naked grief to defensiveness to a kind of flippancy I recognized from Leah. Things only matter if you let them. People only matter if you let them.
Cassie?
Sloane sat the phone down. I stepped forward. On Sloane's other side, Dean did the same, until the two of us were standing facing each other, the phone on the coffee table between us.
We're going to tell you about the killer we're looking for, I said. I swear to God, if this is about Bo,
we'll tell you about our killer, I continued evenly.
And then you'll tell us.
Tori was quiet enough on the other end of the line that I wasn't completely sure she hadn't hung up on us. I glanced at Dean. He nodded slightly, and I started. The killer we're looking for has killed 5 people since January 1st. 4 of the 5 people were between the ages of 18 and 25. While this could mean that our killer has a fixation on this age group due to a prior experience in his or her life, we believe the most likely explanation, and the one that fits best with the nature of the crimes, is that the killer is young as well.
We're looking for someone in his early 20s,
Dean continued. Someone who had a reason to target the casinos in general, and the Majesty in particular. It's likely our killer has extensive experience with Las Vegas, and is used to going unseen. This is both his greatest asset and the fuel for much of his rage. Our killer is used to being dismissed, I continued. He almost certainly has a genius-level IQ, but probably performed poorly in school. Our killer can play by the rules, but feels no guilt for breaking them. He's not just smarter than people give him credit for. He's smarter than the people who make the rules, smarter than the people who give the assignments, smarter than the people he works for and with. Killing is an act of dominance. Dean's voice was quiet and understated, but there was conviction in it, the kind of conviction that spoke of first-hand experience. The killer we're looking for doesn't care about physical dominance. He wouldn't back down from a fight, but he's lost his fair share. This killer dominates his victims mentally. They don't lose because he's stronger than they are. They lose because he's smarter. They lose, I continue, because he's a true believer.
Bo isn't religious.
Tori latched onto that, which I took to mean she recognized just how well everything else we'd said fit her foster brother. Our killer believes in power. He believes in destiny. Dean paused. He believes that something has been taken from him. He believes, I said quietly, that now is the time to take it back. We didn't tell Tori about the cult. With Nightshade's attention on Vegas, knowing could put her in danger. Instead, I stopped telling Tori about our killer's present state of mind and started extrapolating backward. Our killer is young, I said again. But it's clear from the level of organization in the kills that these murders have been years in the making. There was a reason we hadn't been able to pinpoint the unsub's age until we'd identified Michael as the intended 5th victim. So much about these kills spoke of planning, experience, grandiosity, artistry. To have reached that point by the age of 21? In all likelihood, our killer has one or more traumatic events in his past, most likely prior to the age of 12. These events may have included physical or psychological abuse, but given the lengths the killer is going to get their attention. I didn't say those words out loud. In order to prove himself worthy, it's also likely we're looking for someone who experienced a sudden loss and severe emotional or physical abandonment. The cessation of abuse, Dean said with heart-rending calm, would have been as traumatic and formative as what came before. Stop! Tori whispered the same thing she'd said when she'd answered the phone. But this time, her voice was rough and low and desperate. Please, just stop. He was killing in a pattern. Sloane spoke suddenly, her whisper a match for Tori's. It was going to end in the Majesty's Theater, February 13th, the theater. That was where it was going to end. You matter to our killer, Tori. Dean bowed his head. It was always going to be you. Just like it had to be one of your biggest rivals. Just like it had to be Camille. Just like it had to be a young girl with dark hair that first night. Just like it had to be Aaron. Tori choked out, her voice no longer a whisper. Michael caught my gaze. He held up a pad of paper. On the verge, it said. I gave a nod to show that I understood. Whatever we said next had the potential to push her one way or the other, to believe or fight back against every word we said, to help us nail Bo or throw up a wall. I chose my words carefully. Have you ever seen Bo draw a spiral? That was a gamble, but the violence we'd seen these past few days was years in the making. If our profile was right, if Bo had been working toward this for years, if his sick needs and plan could be traced back to an early trauma. You planned, and you dreamed, and you practiced. You never let yourself forget. Oh, God. Tori broke. I could hear the exact moment she shattered. I could almost see her sinking to the ground, pulling her knees to her chest, the hand holding her phone dropping to her side. Dean caught my eyes in his. His hand made his way to my shoulder. I closed my eyes and leaned into his touch. I did this to you, I thought, unable to get the picture of Tori out of my mind. I broke you. I shattered you because I could. Because I had to. Because we need you. He used to draw them in the dirt. Tori's voice was hoarse. I wanted to tell her that I knew how it felt to have your insides carved out. I wanted to tell her I knew what it was like to feel hollow, like there was no grief left to be had. Bo never drew on paper, but he used to draw spirals in the dirt. No one ever saw them but me. He never let anyone see them but me. It was always going to be you. Bo would have killed her. She was his family. He loved her. And he would have killed her. He had to, for reasons I couldn't quite grasp. You need to talk to the FBI, Dean said gently. You need to answer their questions. He gave her a moment to process his words. I know what I'm asking, Tori. I know what it will cost you. From experience. He knows from experience. Dean had testified against his father. We were asking Tori to do the same to Bo. I heard our foster mother talking about him once, Tori said after an extended silence. I heard her say... I could hear the effort it took for her to even form the words. They found Bo half dead in the desert. He was 6 years old, and someone just left him there. No food, no water. He'd been out there for days. Her voice shook slightly. No one knew where he'd come from or who left him. Bo couldn't tell them. He didn't say a word. Not to anyone for 2 years. No one knew where he'd come from. Like dominoes falling one by one, everything I knew about Bo's motivation, about the murders, began to shift. You. They think they can arrest you. They think they can charge you with murder. They think they can put you in a box. They have no idea what you are, what you have become. They have no proof. There's talk of security footage at the Desert Rose, the day you anointed the one who was to become your fifth. The same pawn store that caught Victor McKinney assaulting you on camera has provided footage of you there hours before, loosening the brick. The FBI claims they have a plastic baggie with your fingerprints on it.
They claim to be scanning it for Earnshaw's blood. Tori is talking about teaching you hypnosis, about what little she knows of your past. You won't be in here forever. You'll finish what you started. You'll take your seat at the table. The 9th seat. 9. 9. 9. 4 more, and then you will be finished. 4 more, and you can go home.
Chapter 59. Agent Sterling and Agent Briggs sat in the interrogation room opposite Bo Donovan. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit. His wrists were handcuffed together. A public defender sat beside Bo, continually advising his client not to speak. Back at the safe house, Leah, Michael, Dean, and I watched. Sloane had tried to watch too, but she couldn't. She'd been wearing the shirt Aaron gave her for 3 days straight. We needed a confession. We'd laid out enough evidence to convince the DA to press charges, but to avoid a trial, to be sure that Bo would pay, we needed a confession.
My client, the lawyer said forcefully, is pleading the 5th.
You have nothing, Bo told Briggs and Sterling, his eyes simultaneously dead of emotion and strangely alight.
This is the 2nd time you've tried to put me in this box. It won't work. Of course it won't. My client, the lawyer repeated, is pleading the 5th. 9 bodies. Agent Briggs leaned forward. Every 3 years, on dates derived from the Fibonacci sequence.
This was the final card we had to play.
Keep going,
Michael told them, his words going to the earpiece both agents wore.
He's surprised that you know about the others, and the way his eyes just darted toward his lawyer, agitation, anger, fear.
Bo's lawyer was an outsider. He didn't know why his client had done what he'd done. He didn't know what had inspired him to kill. We were banking on the fact that Bo might not want the man to know. One by one, Briggs started pulling pictures out of his file. Kills, but not Bo's.
Drowning, fire, impaling, strangling.
Bo was getting visibly agitated.
Knife.
Briggs paused. That was as far as Bo's pattern had gone.
You would have beaten your 6th victim to death.
Another picture. You weren't expecting this. You weren't expecting the FBI to know. Bo went pale. The FBI can't know. You only meant to hint at age-old secrets, to get their attention, to make them see you. You never meant for it to go this far.
Number 7 would have been poison,
Briggs continued. He laid the last picture down. In it, a woman with blonde hair, green eyes, and a face that tended more toward quirky than cute lay on her back. Her mouth was crusted with blood. Her body was contorted. She'd ripped her own fingernails off. I swallowed as I remembered what Judd had said about Nightshade's poison. Undetectable, incurable, painful.
She was my best friend.
Agent Sterling brought her fingers to the very edge of Scarlett's picture.
Did they take someone from you, too? They?
The lawyer said.
Who's they?
He gestured angrily toward the pictures.
What is the meaning of this?
Briggs locked his eyes onto Bo.
Should I answer that question? He asked. Should I tell him why we're showing you these pictures?
No! The word burst out of Bo as a snarl. You don't talk to outsiders. Leah's insight into cult mentality rang in my head. You don't tell them what they're not blessed enough to know. Get out, Bo told his lawyer.
I can't just leave.
I'm the client, Bo said, and I said get out, now. The lawyer left.
You're under no obligation to speak with us without your lawyer present, Briggs said. But then, I'm not convinced you want him to hear about this. I'm not convinced you want anyone to hear about this. Briggs paused. You're right when you said we might not have enough for a conviction.
Sterling picked up where Briggs left off.
But we do have enough for a trial.
12 people on a jury, Sterling said. I recognized her strategy of playing up the numbers, playing into his pattern of thinking. Dozens of reporters. The victims' families will want to be there, of course.
They will destroy you, Bo said.
Will they? Sterling asked. Or will they destroy you? Those words landed. I could see Bo straining against the handcuffs, straining to keep from turning back and looking over his shoulder. Tell him a story, Dean instructed the agents. Start with the day someone found him in the desert. Dean and I were used to using our abilities to catch killers, but profiling was just as useful in knowing how to break them.
Let me tell you a story, Briggs said on screen. It's a story about a little boy who was found, half dead, in the desert when he was 6 years old.
Bo's breath was coming quicker now.
No one knew where he'd come from, Briggs continued.
No one knew what he was, I said. Briggs repeated my words to Bo. We weren't positive how Bo had spent those first 6 years, but Dean had a theory. I'd wondered, days ago, if Dean had seen any of himself when he looked at Bo. I thought that if the unsub was young, his profile wouldn't be dissimilar from Daniel Redding's apprentices. You didn't just stumble across the pattern. You knew to look for it. You spent your whole life looking for it. And the reason you did that lies in those first 6 years.
You don't know what you're talking about.
Bo's voice was no louder than a whisper, but it cut through the air.
You couldn't possibly know.
We know they didn't want you. Sterling went for the kill. Bo's murders had taken the cult's pattern to the next level. He'd been appealing to them, attacking them, showing them just how worthy he was. They left you to die. You weren't good enough for them. Sterling paused. And they were right. Look at you. You got caught. Her eyes trailed over his orange jumpsuit, his cuffs. They were right.
You have no idea what I am,
Bo said, his voice shaking with emotion.
You have no idea what I'm capable of. Neither do they. No one knows.
His voice rose with each word.
I was born for this. The rest of them, they're recruited as adults, but number 9 is always born within their walls. The child of the Brotherhood and the Pythia, blood of their blood, 9.
9 is a name to him, Dean said, a title. Tell him it's not his. Tell him he doesn't deserve it. You're not 9, Sterling said. You're never going to be 9. Bo lifted cuffed hands to his own collar. He latched his fingers over his shirt and pulled it roughly off his shoulder. Underneath, etched onto his chest, was a series of jagged cuts, halfway healed and on their way to a scar. 7 small circles forming a heptagon around a cross. I stopped breathing. That symbol. I knew that symbol.
7 masters.
Bo's face was taut, his voice full of fury. He ran his fingers around the outside of the heptagon. 7 circles.
The Pythia.
He pressed his finger into the wound and pulled it down the vertical line on the cross. His hand trembled as he went to do the same with the horizontal.
And 9.
The symbol. I know that symbol. 7 circles around a cross. I'd seen it carved into the lid of a plain wooden coffin, uncovered at the crossroads on a country dirt road. You wish you were 9, Agent Sterling said, still pressing. I felt my limbs going numb. Blackness crept in on my field of vision. Dean, I wheezed. He was with me in an instant. I see it, he said. I need you to breathe for me, Cassie. I see it. The symbol Bo had carved into his own flesh had also been carved into my mother's coffin. Not possible. June 21st, not a Fibonacci date. My mother died in June. On screen, Beau's hands were still trembling. His fingers tensed. They clawed at his neck. His back arched, and then he fell to the floor, convulsing. Screaming. I registered the sound as if it were coming from very far away. He's screaming. And then he was gargling, choking on blood as it poured from his lips, his fingernails clawing violently against his own body, against the floor. Poison. Breathe, Dean repeated.
We need help in here!
Sterling was screaming. Beau is screaming, and Sterling is screaming. And finally, the convulsions stopped. Finally, Beau was still. 7 small circles, forming a heptagon around a cross. I forced myself to suck in a breath, and then another and another. Beau's cracked lips moved. He looked at Briggs in one final moment of clarity. I don't, he struggled to say. I don't wish I was 9. He sounded like a child. You've been poisoned, Briggs told him. You need to tell us. I don't believe in wishing, Beau murmured. And then his eyes rolled back in his head, and he died. Chapter 60. Beau was poisoned. I thought the words, but didn't understand them. The cult killed him. Nightshade killed Beau. Beau, who'd carved a symbol onto his own chest, a symbol someone else had carved into the box that contained my mother's remains. My mother didn't die on a Fibonacci date, I said. It was June. There are no Fibonacci dates in June, none in July. I realized on some level that Michael and Leah were staring at me, that Dean had wrapped his arms around me, that my body had collapsed against his. My mother had disappeared 5 years ago, 6 in June. The person who'd attacked her had used a knife. It was poison that year. In the pattern, it was poison. Nightshade was the killer. The knife was New York, 6 years before that. There wasn't supposed to be another one for 21 years. Nothing about my mother's death fit the pattern. So why was the symbol etched onto her coffin? I struggled out of Dean's arms and went for my computer. I pulled up the pictures. The royal blue shroud, the bones, my mother's necklace. My finger hit at the keys again and again until the symbol showed up. Leah and Michael came up behind us. Is that? 7 masters, I said, forcing my hand around the circles on the outside of the symbol. The Pythia, the vertical line, and 9. 7 masters. Sloane appeared in the doorway, as if the mere mention of numbers had called her to us. 7 circles, 7 ways of killing. I pulled my eyes from the screen to look at Sloane. I always wondered why there were only 7 methods, she said, her eyes swollen, her face pale, instead of 9. 3. 3 times 3. 3 times 3 times 3. But only 7 ways to kill. Because this group, whatever it was, however long it had been around, had 9 members at a time. 7 masters, the Pythia, and 9. Beau Donovan is dead, Leah told Sloane. Poison, presumably nightshades. Sloane's hands smoothed themselves down over the front of the shirt Aaron had given her. She trembled slightly, but all she said was, maybe the flower was for him. The white flower in the photograph that Nightshade had sent Judd. White flower. Something stuck in the back of my brain, like food caught in between the teeth. Nightshade always sent his victims the bloom of a white nightshade plant. White flowers. I walked into the kitchen, scrambled until I found what I was looking for. I pulled out the evidence envelope, opened it, removed the photo inside. Not white nightshade. The photo Nightshade had sent Judd wasn't of a white nightshade bloom. It was a picture of a paper flower. Origami. I stumbled backward and grabbed the edge of the counter for balance, thinking of Beau's last moments, the words he'd said. I don't believe in wishing. I saw the little girl in the candy store, staring at a lollipop. I saw her father come and put her on his shoulders. I saw her beside the fountain, holding the penny. "I don't believe in wishes," she'd said. There was a white origami flower behind her ear. In my mind, I saw her mother come to get her. I saw her father tossing a penny into the water. In my mind, I saw his face. I saw the water, and I saw his face. And just like that, I was back on the banks of the Potomac, a thick black binder on my lap. "Enjoying a bit of light reading?" The voice echoed through my memory, and this time I could make out the speaker's face. "You live at Judd's place, right? He and I go way back." "Nightshade," I forced out the word. "I've seen him." Leah looked almost concerned, despite herself. "We know." "No," I said. "In Vegas. I've seen him here. Twice. I thought I was watching him. But maybe he was watching me." "He had a child with him," I said. "There was a woman, too. The girl, she came up next to me at the fountain. She was little, 3, 4 at most. She had a penny in her hand. I asked if she was going to make a wish, and she said—" I couldn't coax my lips into forming the words. Dean formed them for me. "I don't believe in wishing." His gaze flicked to Michael's, then to Leah's. The same thing Bo Donovan said when Sterling told him he only wished he were 9. Right before he died. "You said Nightshade had a woman with him," Dean said. "What did she look like, Cassie?" "Strawberry blonde hair," I said. "Medium height, slender." I thought of my mother's body, stripped to the bones and buried at the crossroads, with honor, with care. Maybe they weren't trying to kill you. Maybe you weren't supposed to die. Maybe you were supposed to be like this woman. Bo said the 9th member was always born to it. How did he phrase it? Dean stared at a point just to the left of my shoulder, and then repeated Bo's words exactly. "The child of the Brotherhood and the Pythia, blood of their blood. 7 masters, a child, and the child's mother." The woman at the fountain had strawberry blonde hair. It would be red in some lights, like my mother's. 9 members, 7 masters, a woman, a child. "The Pythia was the name given to the oracle at Delphi," Sloan said. "A priestess at the temple of Apollo. A prophetess." I thought of the family, the picture-perfect family I'd looked at, knowing to my core that it was something I'd never have. Mother, father, child. I turned to Dean. "We have to call Briggs." Chapter 61. The man we knew as Nightshade stared back at me from the page. The police artist had captured the lines of his face. Strong jaw, thick brows, dark hair with just enough curl to make his remaining features look boyish. The wrinkles at the corners of his eyes told me he was older than he looked. Light stubble masked the fullness of his lips. "You came to Vegas to take care of a problem. Watching me, tormenting Judd, that you enjoyed." I felt someone take a seat next to me at the kitchen table. The FBI had taken the sketch and run with it. They were monitoring the airport, bus stations, traffic cameras, and courtesy of Sloan, the casino's security feeds. "You look like 1,000 other men. You don't look dangerous." The man in the sketch looked like a neighbor, a coworker, a Little League coach, a dad. I could see him in my mind, hoisting the little red-haired girl up onto his shoulders. "You've done everything you can." I tore my gaze from the police sketch to look at Judd. This man killed your daughter, I thought. This man might know what happened to my mother. "Trust Ronnie and Briggs to do what they can," Judd continued. A manhunt didn't fall under Natural's jurisdiction. Once the FBI figured out who the man in the picture was, once we had a name, a history, information, maybe we could be of some use, But until then, all we could do was wait. By then, a voice whispered in the back of my head, it might be too late. Nightshade might disappear. Once he left Vegas, we might never find him again. Judd wouldn't get justice for Scarlett's death. I wouldn't get answers about my mother's. Beside me, Judd let himself look at the police sketch, made himself look at it.
You do what you can,
he said after seconds of silence had stretched to a minute.
To make sure your kids are safe. From the second they're born.
He stared at the lines of Nightshade's face, the ordinariness of it.
You want to protect them. From every skinned knee, from hurt feelings and punk kids who push smaller ones into the dirt, from the worst parts of yourself and the worst parts of this world.
This man killed your daughter. She died in pain, her fingernails torn, her body contorting.
Briggs saved my life.
Judd forcibly shifted his eyes away from the man in the picture and turned to look at me.
He saved me the day he brought me Dean.
Judd's right hand slowly worked its way out of a fist. He closed his eyes for a moment, then reached for the picture of his daughter's killer and turned it face down. You do what you can to make sure your kids are safe. This was Judd, trying to protect me. This was Judd, telling me to let it go. I thought about the little red-haired girl, about Bo Donovan, about 7 and 9, the symbol carved into my mother's coffin, the pattern of murders stretching back over years and generations. I didn't want anyone's protection. I want Nightshade. I want answers. Judd responded like I'd said the words out loud.
You have to want something else more.
Home isn't a place, Cassie. Home is the people who love you most. Standing on the back porch, looking out at the safe house backyard, I let the memory wash over me. I lost myself to it. I needed to remember. I needed my mom to be my mom. Not a body, not bones, not a victim. My mom. We're dancing. Right there, on the side of the road. Her red hair escapes the scarf. It frames her face as she moves, wild and free and absolutely unabashed. I spin in circles, my hands held out to the side. The world is a blur of colors and darkness and snow. She tilts her head back, and I do the same, sticking out my tongue. We can shed the past. We can dance it off. We can laugh and sing and spin. Forever and ever. No matter what. No matter what. No matter what. I didn't want to forget. The smile on her face, the way she'd moved, the way she'd danced like no one was watching, no matter where we were. I sucked in a breath and wished, fiercely, vehemently, that I didn't understand how a stranger could have looked at her and thought, she's the one. They were watching you, I thought. They chose you. I'd never asked myself what my mother's killer had chosen her for. I thought of the woman I'd seen with Nightshade, the little girl's mother. Do you know what he is? I asked the woman, holding the image of her in my mind. Are you a part of this group? Are you a killer? 7 masters, the Pythia, and 9. I thought of the hundreds of people who'd passed through my mother's shows. 7 masters. Had one of them been there? Had they seen her? Did you expect my mom to go willingly? I asked them silently. Did you try to break her? Did she fight you? I looked down at my wrists, remembering the feel of zip ties digging into them. I remembered being stalked, hunted, trapped. I remembered Locke's knife. I remembered fighting, lying, manipulating, struggling, running, hiding, fighting. I was my mother's daughter. They didn't know what they were getting into with you, I thought, my mother still dancing in my memory, fearless and free. My mom and Locke had grown up with an abusive father. When my mom got pregnant with me, she got out. She left her father's house in the dead of night and never looked back. Dance it off. My mother was a survivor. The back door opened. After a moment's pause, Dean came to stand behind me. I leaned back into him, my hands held palms up in front of me, my eyes on my wrists. Weber had bound them behind my back. Did they bind your arms, Mom? Did they give you a chance to win your freedom? Did they tell you that yours was a higher purpose? Did they kill you for fighting? By the time they killed you, did you want to die? I've been trying to imagine, Dean said, what this is like for you. And instead, his voice caught in his throat. I keep imagining seeing her, choosing her, taking her. Dean cut off abruptly. You hate yourself for imagining it. You hate how easy it is to put yourself in the mindset of my mother's killer, or killers. You hate that it makes any kind of sense at all. I imagine taking her, I told him. I imagine being taken. I swallowed. Whatever this group is, they operate by certain rules. There's a ritual, an uncompromising tradition. 7 masters, the Pythia, and 9. Wordlessly, Dean reached around my body. He took my right hand in his. His thumb grazed my wrist exactly where Weber's zip ties had dug into my flesh. Like mother, like daughter. All thoughts cut off as Dean lifted my wrist to his lips, pressing a soft, silent kiss to the once abused skin. He closed his eyes. I closed mine. I could feel him breathing behind me. I matched my breaths to his. In, out, in, out. You don't have to be strong right now, Dean told me. I turned, opened my eyes, caught his lips in mine. Yes, I do. Like mother, like daughter. I was a fighter. My neck arched. I pulled back from Dean, my face less than an inch from his. You should really put a tie on the door or something. Leah sauntered onto the back porch, utterly unremorseful about interrupting us. Serial-killing cults and citywide manhunts aside, a little discretion on the PDA front goes a long way. I took that to mean Leah hadn't received any updates on the case. Briggs and Sterling hadn't called. Nightshade's still out there. The FBI is still looking. Leah. Dean's tone clearly requested that she vacate the premises. Leah ignored him and focused on me. I told Michael to put on his big boy pants, she informed me. I think the near-death experience might have put a damper on his downward spiral, and besides, Leah met my gaze. I told him it was your turn. There was a beat of silence as I absorbed the full meaning of Leah's words. She was here for me. Michael was here. Sloan, shattered, grieving Sloan, was here. Briggs saved my life, Judd had said. He saved me the day he brought me Dean. I wanted Nightshade behind bars. I wanted answers. But when I let myself, I wanted this more. Dean and Leah and Michael and Sloan. Home is the people who love you most. Forever and ever. No matter... Guys! Michael stood frozen at the back door. Behind him, I could see Sloan, dark circles ringing her eyes. I knew then that there was news. The thudding of my heart, the roar in my ears. I knew there was news, and I was terrified to let Michael say a single word. They got him. Nightshade, the man in the picture. They got him. The woman? I heard, as if from a distance. My voice. My question. The little girl? Michael shook his head, which I took to mean that they hadn't been with Nightshade. The Pythia. The child. My heart raced as I thought of the man I'd seen, the man I'd remembered. You killed Judd's daughter. You killed Bo. You know why that symbol was carved onto my mother's coffin. What aren't you telling us? Leah's voice was low. Michael. I couldn't read Michael the way he would have been able to read me, but in the second it took him to reply to Leah's question, His expression was enough to knock the breath from my lungs.
Nightshade stuck Briggs with some kind of needle.
Michael looked from Leah to Dean to me.
Injected him with something. They don't know what.
My mouth went dry, and the roaring sound in my ears surged. Poison.
Chapter 62.
One last trick up Nightshade's sleeve. Your grand finale. Your au revoir. I'd been worried that the FBI wouldn't catch him. It hadn't occurred to me, even for a second, to worry about what might happen once they did. Undetectable. Incurable. Painful. I didn't want to remember what Judd had said about Nightshade's poison, but the words kept repeating themselves in a loop in my head.
Cassie.
Judd appeared, his face grim.
We need to talk.
What else was there to say? Undetectable, incurable, painful. Sloane's lips were moving as she silently went through a list of every poison known to man. Dean had gone ashen.
He claims there's an antidote,
Judd said. Our guardian didn't specify who he was. He didn't have to. Nightshade.
And what does he want?
Dean asked hoarsely.
In exchange for that antidote.
I knew the answer. Knew it based on the way Judd had said my name. The number of times I'd seen Nightshade. The time he'd spent watching me. My mother fought tooth and nail. She resisted whatever it was you people wanted from her, whatever you wanted her to be. I looked from Dean to Judd. He wants me. I stood on one side of a two-way mirror and watched as the guards escorted the man I'd identified as Nightshade into the room on the other side. The man's hands were cuffed behind his body. His hair was mussed. A dark bruise was forming on one side of his face. He didn't look dangerous. He didn't look like a killer.
He can't see you,
Agent Sterling reminded me. She looked at me, her own eyes shadowed.
He can't touch you. He stays on that side of the glass, and you stay here.
Behind us, Judd placed one hand on my shoulder. You won't put me in the same room as Scarlett's killer, I thought. Not even to save Briggs. I tried not to think about Briggs, and instead focused on the man on the other side of the glass. He looked older than he had in my memory. Younger than Judd, but significantly older than Agent Sterling. Older than my mother would have been, if she'd lived.
Take your time,
Nightshade said. Even though I knew he couldn't see me, it felt like he was looking directly at me. He has kind eyes. My stomach twisted with unexpected nausea as he continued. I'm here when you're ready, Cassandra. Judd's grip tightened slightly on my shoulder. You'd kill him if you could, I thought. Judd wouldn't have lost a single night's sleep over snapping this man's neck. But he didn't make a move. Instead, he stood still, with me. I'm ready, I told Agent Sterling. I wasn't, but time was a luxury we didn't have. Judd met Agent Sterling's gaze and gave a curt nod. Sterling stepped to the side of the room and hit a button, converting the two-way mirror in front of us to a clear pane. You can see me, I thought as Nightshade's eyes landed on mine. You see Judd. Your lips curve slightly. I kept my face as blank as I could. One last card to play. One last game.
Cassandra.
Nightshade seemed to enjoy saying my name.
Judd. And the indomitable Agent Sterling.
You watched us. You get off on Judd's grief, on Sterling's.
You wanted to talk to me?
I said, my voice unnaturally calm. Talk. I expected the man on the other side of the glass to say something about Scarlett, or about my mother, or about Bo. Instead, he said something in a language I didn't recognize. I glanced at Sterling. The man opposite us repeated himself.
It's a rare snake,
he translated after a moment. Its venom is slower acting than most. Find a zoo that has one, and you'll find the anti-venom. In time, I hope. He smiled, and this time it was chilling. I always have had a certain fondness for your Agent Briggs. I didn't understand. This man, this killer, had brought me here. He'd used the only bargaining chip he had to bring me here, and now, having seen me, he was handing it in? Why? If you enjoy tormenting Judd and Sterling, if you want to leave them with the taste of fear in their mouths, with the bitter knowledge that the people they love will never be safe, why cure Briggs? You're lying, Agent Sterling said. We should have brought Leah, I thought, and a second later, I shouldn't be here. The feeling started in my gut and snaked its way out to my limbs, weighing them down. Am I? Nightshade countered. Incurable. Painful. I spoke the words out loud without meaning to, but didn't pull back from talking once they'd made their way out of my mouth. You wouldn't just hand away your secret, not this easily, not this fast. Nightshade's eyes lingered on mine a moment longer. There are limits, he admitted, to what one might say. Some secrets are sacred. Some things you take to the grave. His voice had taken on a low, humming quality. But then, I never said your Agent Briggs had been afflicted with that poison. That poison. Your poison. Your legacy. Go. Judd spoke for the first time since the man who'd killed his daughter had been brought into the room. He met Sterling's gaze and repeated himself. He's telling the truth. Go. Go get the anti-venom. Go save Briggs. We're done here, Sterling said, reaching for the button on the wall. Stop! The word burst out of my mouth. I couldn't draw my gaze away from the killers. You brought me here for a reason. You do everything for a reason. You all do. Nightshade smiled. I thought, he said, that you might have some questions for me. I saw now the game he was playing. He'd brought me here, but staying, listening to him, asking him for answers, that was on me. Go, Judd told Sterling again. After a split second's hesitation, she did as he said, dialing her phone on the way out. Judd turned back to me. I want to tell you not to say another word, Cassie. Not to listen. Not to look back. But he wouldn't. He wouldn't make me walk away. I wasn't sure he could walk away himself. You can look at the files, Judd had said, back when this all began. But you're not doing it alone. Neither one of us was doing this alone now. Bo Donovan. I turned back to the monster waiting patiently on the other side of the glass. I couldn't make my mouth form the words to ask about my mother, not yet. And I wouldn't bring up Scarlet. You killed him. Was that a question? Nightshade asked. Your people left him in the desert 15 years ago. We don't kill children. Nightshade's tone was flat. You don't kill children. That was a rule they lived by, a sacred law. But you have no problems leaving them in the desert to die of their own accord. What was Bo to you? Why raise him at all if you were going to turn him out? Nightshade smiled slightly. Every dynasty needs its heir. My brain whirred. You weren't raised the way Bo was. The rest of them, Bo had said, they're recruited as adults. The term master suggests an apprentice model, I continued. I'm assuming masters choose their own replacements. Adults, not children. The cycle repeats every 21 years. But the 9th member, the one you call 9. 9 is the greatest of us. The constant. The bridge from generation to generation. Your leader, I filled in. Bo hadn't just been born in their walls. He'd been born to lead them. You left him to die, I said. We do not kill children, Nightshade repeated. his voice just as flat as it had been the first time he said the words. Even if they prove themselves unworthy, even when they fail to do what is asked, and it becomes clear they will never be able to take the mantle to which they were born. Even when the way must be cleared for a true heir. What did they ask you to do, Bo? What kind of monster were they molding you to be? I couldn't let my mind go down that path. I had to concentrate on the here and now. On Nightshade. And the little girl? I said. The one I saw you with. Is she worthy? Is she the new heir? A true heir? I took a step forward, toward the glass. What are you doing to her? I don't believe in wishing. Are you her father? I asked. The girl has many fathers. That answer sent a chill down my spine. 7 masters, I said, hoping to jar him into telling me something I didn't know. The Pythia, and 9. All are tested. All must be found worthy. And that woman I saw with you? She's worthy? The question tore out of me with quiet force. My mother wasn't worthy. My mother fought. Did you take her too? I asked, my mind on the woman I'd seen. Did you attack her? Cut her? I continued, my heart pounding in my chest. Did you torture her until she became one of you? Your oracle? Nightshade was quiet for several moments. Then he leaned forward, his eyes on mine. I like to think of the Pythia more as Lady Justice, he said. She is our counsel, our judge and our jury, until her child comes of age. She lives and dies for us, and we for her. Lives and dies. Lives and dies. Lives and dies. You killed my mother, I said. You people took her. You attacked her. You misunderstand. Nightshade made the words sound reasonable, gentle even, when the room around him was charged with an unholy energy. Power. Games. Pain. This was the cult's stock in trade. I reached for a piece of paper and drew the symbol I'd seen on Bo's chest. I slammed it against the glass. This was on my mother's coffin, I said. I don't misunderstand anything. She wasn't part of the pattern. She wasn't killed on a Fibonacci date. She was attacked with a knife the same year you were proving yourself worthy with poison. My voice shook. So don't tell me that I don't understand. You, all of you, one of you, I don't know, but you chose her. You tested her, and you found her unworthy. They didn't kill children. They left them to die. But my mother? You killed her, I said, the words rough against my throat and sour in my mouth. You killed her and stripped her flesh from her bones and buried her. We did no such thing. The emphasis on the first word somehow managed to break through the haze of fury and sorrow clouding my mind. There can only be one Pythia. Every instinct I had told me this was what Nightshade had brought me here to hear. This was what he'd traded his last remaining bit of leverage to say. One woman to provide counsel. One woman to bear the child. One child, one worthy child, to carry the tradition on. One woman, one child. You killed her. We did no such thing. All are tested. All must be found worthy. My mother had been buried with care, with remorse. I thought of the woman I'd seen with the little girl. One woman, one child. I thought about how a group could possibly persist for hundreds of years, taking women, holding them, until captive became monster. Lady Justice, the Pythia. I thought about the fact that the woman I'd seen by the fountain hadn't taken her child. She hadn't run. She hadn't asked for help. She'd smiled at Nightshade. There can only be one Pythia. You make them fight. I wasn't sure if I was profiling or talking to him. I wasn't sure it mattered. You take a new woman, a new Pythia, and there can only be one. The woman, I said. The one I saw with you. My voice lowered itself to a whisper, but the words were deafening in my own ears. She killed my mother. You made her kill my mother. We all have choices, Nightshade replies. The Pythia chooses to live. Why bring me here, I thought, aware on some level that my body was shaking. My eyes were wet. Why tell me this? Why give me a glimpse of something I'm not blessed enough to know? Perhaps someday, Nightshade said. That choice will be yours, Cassandra. Judd had been standing ramrod stiff beside me. But in that instant, he surged forward. He slammed the heel of his hand against the switch on the wall, and the pain darkened. You can't see us. I can see you, but you can't see us. Judd took me by the shoulders. He pulled me to him, blocking my view, holding me, even as I started to fight him. I've got you, he murmured. You're okay. I've got you, Cassie. You're okay. You're going to be okay. An order. A plea. 2117. Until Nightshade spoke, I hadn't realized the speaker was still on. At first, I thought he was saying a Fibonacci number, but then he clarified. If you want to see the woman, you'll find her in room 2117. The Pythia chooses to live. The words echoed in my mind. Perhaps one day, that choice will be yours. Room 2117. Chapter 63. The hours after Nightshade's interrogation blurred into nothingness. Sterling called to say that Briggs had received the antivenom. She called to say that he was expected to make a full, if slow, recovery. She called to say they found the woman. They found the little girl. Fewer than 20 hours after Nightshade had named my mother's killer, I stepped into room 2117 at the Dark Angel Hotel Casino. You could smell the blood from 50 yards away. On the walls. On the floor. The scene was familiar. Blood. On the walls. On my hand. I feel it. I smell it. But this time, there was a body. The woman, strawberry blonde hair, younger than I remembered, lay in her own blood. Her white dress soaked through. She'd been killed with a knife. Wielded by Nightshade before he was captured? One of the other masters? A new Pythia? I didn't know. And for the first time since I'd joined the Naturals program, I wasn't sure I wanted to know. This woman had killed my mother. Whether she'd had a choice, whether it was kill or be killed, whether she'd enjoyed it, I couldn't be sorry she was dead. The little girl sat in a chair, her small legs dangling halfway to the ground. She was staring blankly ahead, no expression on her face. She was the reason I was here. The child hadn't said a word, hadn't even seemed to see a single one of the agents who had come into this room. They were afraid to touch her, afraid to remove her by force. I remember coming back to my mother's dressing room. I remember there was blood. I made my way through the room. I knelt next to the chair. Hi, I said. The little girl blinked. Her eyes met mine. I saw a hint, just a hint, of recognition. Bo Donovan had been 6 years old when he'd been abandoned in the desert by the people who'd raised him, deemed unsuitable for their needs, whatever those needs might be. You're 3, I thought, slipping into the girl's perspective. Maybe 4. Too young to understand what was happening. Too young to have been through so much. You know things, I thought. Maybe you don't even know that you know them. Bo had known enough at the age of 6 to uncover the pattern once he was older. You might be able to lead us to them. I'm Cassie, I said. The child said nothing. What's your name? I asked. She looked down. Beside her on the ground, there was a white origami flower, soaked in blood. 9, she whispered. My name is 9. A chill ran down my spine, leaving nothing but fury in its wake. You're not a part of them, I thought, fiercely protective. She was just a baby, just a little girl. Your mommy called you something else, I said, trying to remember the name the woman had used that day at the fountain. Laurel. Mommy calls me Laurel. She turned to look at the woman on the ground. Her face held no hint of emotion. She didn't flinch at the blood. Don't look at Mommy, Laurel. I moved to block her view. Look at me. That's not my mommy. The little girl's tone was dispassionate. My heart thudded in my chest. It's not? The master hired her to watch me when we came here. Laurel's chubby baby hands went to an old-fashioned locket around her neck. She let me open it. Inside, there was a picture. That's my mommy, Laurel said. Not possible. The necklace, the bones, the blood. It was her blood. The tests said it was her blood. I felt the world closing in on me, because there were 2 people in the photo, and Laurel looked exactly the same in the picture as she did today. It was recent. That's my mommy, Laurel had said. But the woman in the picture was my mother, too. I always knew. I always thought that if she'd survived, she would have come back to me. Somehow, some way, if she'd survived. Forever and ever, Laurel whispered, each word a knife in my gut. No matter what. Laurel, I said, my voice hoarse. Where is Mommy? In the room. Laurel stared at me and into me. Masters come and masters go, but the Pythia lives in the room. Epilogue. I stood in front of the tombstone. Dean stood beside me, his body lightly brushing mine. The others stood behind us in a semicircle. Michael and Leah and Sloan, Sterling and Briggs and Judd. The remains the police had recovered from that dirt road had been released to the family, to my dad, to me. My father didn't know that the remains weren't my mother's. He didn't know that she was alive. Masters come and masters go, but the Pythia lives in the room. We had no idea who the woman we'd just buried in my mom's grave was. The necklace she'd been buried with, the blood on the shawl, those had been my mother's. The Pythia chooses to live, Nightshade had told me, knowing quite well that my mother was the one who'd made that choice. I didn't know how long it was after my mother had been taken that she had been forced to fight for her life. Again. I didn't know if it was standard operating procedure for these men to stage a woman's death before they took her. All are tested. All must be found worthy. What I did know was that my mother was alive. Masters come and masters go, but the Pythia lives in the room. My mother hadn't been killed. She hadn't been buried at the crossroads with care. She'd buried her predecessor. My mom's favorite color, her necklace, traces of her blood. From the beginning, Dean and I had seen the funeral rites as rife with remorse. My mother's. Are you ready? Dean asked, his hand on my shoulder. I stared at the tombstone marked with my mother's name a moment longer. For Laurel's sake, the cult needed to think we hadn't put the pieces together. They needed to think that I believed I'd buried my mother. They needed to think that we hadn't read much into the fact that the woman I'd mistaken for Laurel's mother was actually a nanny, a disposable Las Vegas native Nightshade had hired earlier that week. They needed to believe that the FBI had put Laurel into protective custody because of her connection to Nightshade, not her connection to me. We don't kill children. I thought of Bo, wandering the desert, and pushed back the bitter taste in my mouth. I'm ready, I told Dean. I turned, meeting each of the others' eyes, one by one. Home is the people who love you. I was ready to go home, to do whatever it took to find the masters, to protect Laurel, forever and ever. To find my mother, find the Pythia, find the room, no matter what.